Thank you for taking the time to join us as we demonstrate the capabilities of ZTRM Operation Analytics. My name is Jim Guthrie. I'm an account manager with RSD, and we'll be joined by my technical account manager, Craig Hilburn. And so I will talk on a few slides and then hand it off to Craig. So ZTRM, we're very, very excited here at RSD. This is a very exciting time for us. We have a new product, and this is a new product that's been a result of a 2-year collaboration with a community of mainframe performance experts. And these experts primarily consult with major banks and insurance companies around the world, so there's a lot of good insights that they have into this particular market. If we can go to the next slide. Operation Analytics. So it's an information and communication tool enabling stakeholders, business people across the enterprise to easily visualize mainframe consumption from a system, workload, or application perspective. And if you're familiar with RSD, you're familiar that we have a history of developing a rock-solid product, but we also have a long history of working with CIOs to reduce the costs on the mainframe, and we continue that history with ZTRM on mainframe consumption. The data that we are able to produce can help reduce the MLC, it can help control system costs, it can help maintain compliance with license agreements to prevent unexpected costs. The bottom line is that we can expose opportunities for more efficiency. Mainframe market trends. As cost pressures continue for IT, applications and workloads are being moved to distributed platforms. And what we're seeing is that hybrid environments are common. I know that Craig and I have worked with some companies that have decommissioned off of the mainframe, but what we're more familiar with seeing is that companies are still maintaining the application, the mainframe application, but they're also putting some of that workload onto a distributed environment, which means it's more of like a hybrid solution. We're also seeing for market trends, consolidation of environment and support functions are an additional factor resulting in expanding scopes of responsibility for individuals. Outsourcing is always in the equation as well, and we're familiar with some companies of DXC Technology. They used to be called Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and then also IBM. Resource constraints are an issue. Skilled mainframe personnel are retiring, as we all know, without any skilled replacements available. It's just a big, big trend that we're seeing right now. And the key question becomes, what information about systems is available as organizations strive to make the best strategic decisions? So mainframe performance analysis, today's key challenges. What we're seeing is that delays between the extraction of SMF records associated with system processes and events to the time the data is processed and available in reports can make the information less meaningful. This is very, very critical. These delays can commonly be measured in hours and sometimes even days, and in our opinion, this is just really, really unacceptable. Defining the reports requires specific mainframe knowledge, and as mentioned, we talked about this, where there's fewer skilled resources that are available. Additionally, change cycles can be long due to the complex process flow required to create reports. The other challenges that we see is that interpreting the data in the reports can also be a challenge for business users. Processing to update databases and create reports directly contributes to system costs by consuming MSU resources on the mainframe. And hopefully some of these challenges sound familiar. Next slide. So the feedback that we have seen on some of the mainframe performance analysis tools in a key comparison of some key features and components of these particular products, the feedback we received indicates that implementing a new reporting dashboard is complex. Regarding ease of use and understanding, the dashboards are complicated. In most, there is a considerable time delay between the events and the reporting, which we touched base on. Cost is a concern, as most of current solutions contribute to the mainframe resource consumption. Ours does not run on the mainframe, it runs off of the mainframe, so we're not contributing to the consumption. We've also heard that licensing is expensive, and an often, in a unique way, license cost is based on the consumption of the MSU or on the storage used. The last point I want to make is that there are solutions that require licensing for multiple products. So here are the 4 main products that we run into. From IBM, it's TDS, CA, it's Mix, from SAS, SAS and MXG, and then SyncSort Splunk. Craig and I also worked with a customer where we did replace CompuWare iStrobe, and again, for some of the similar reasons that I had just mentioned.
Yeah, Jim, and I just to kind of tag on that, like you said, some of the specific concerns that were mentioned were the complexity of the install and working with the reports, and especially when reports that from what they had already created, that people were looking for more specific information and asking questions. They were, you know, constantly re-engineering reports or trying to pull different data in a different way from the reports that they had, which was a challenge. And then they also talked about some technical issues that, you know, were just a specific challenge for them in their environment.
Right, absolutely. So for ZTRM Operation Analytics, some of the immediate benefits that we see is that what we really wanted to do is develop a easy-to-implement solution with some specific attributes. And we wanted to design it for the new generation of users. So ZTRM utilizes, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, HTML5 for access. Now you can have access to modern browsers and mobile devices. A user dashboard now has interactive capabilities for the business folks and the decision makers that, and it's a unique ways that they may not be able, they can still use this, and they may not even be familiar with the mainframe system. So it's very critical that they can look at this information. And this interaction allows users to visualize and filter data based on the needs that they really want to focus on. The other benefit that we're seeing is that scalability. We are built on Elasticsearch. So ZTRM Operation Analytics can store tremendous volumes of data. And within the license of ZTRM, we actually include a license of Elasticsearch. And Craig, I know that you will, you know, get mad at me if I don't mention it, but I know that you're a big proponent of this, that for Elasticsearch is that you can actually go Google Verizon Elasticsearch, and there's a great YouTube video detailing how Verizon is using Elasticsearch in a repository with 650, is it million, Craig?
It's a billion with a B.
I know you wanted to say that. Yeah,
you know, I did.
I know, 650 billion documents.
Yeah, so, just to tag on to that, it is really a compelling video. The gentleman that does it, he was presenting at a information management conference is what it was. And what is interesting about it, he's a fairly young man, and he leads this team where they actually built up this environment. And he's very honest about, you know, hey, these were some of the challenges we faced. These were some of the things that we did. But what is most compelling about it is he is very transparent and very real. He when he first gets on stage, he admits that he's very nervous. He looks out at the crowd and goes, wow, there's a lot of you out there. And it's really, it's entertaining. It's not only informative, but it's entertaining. And he makes a great presentation regarding Elasticsearch and provides really a lot of good information.
Yep. So with ZTRM as well, it's very simple to implement. We could do this in a few hours. I know that for some of our competitors, it takes a very, very long time to implement. We could do it in a few hours. Craig can come on site and actually help you with that install. And then the last thing I want to mention is that what we're offering right now is a subscription model. It's a leasing model, 3-year, 5-year, and it's very, very affordable. And if it all goes well, where you have an interest into ZTRM Operational Analytics, I would encourage you guys all to take advantage of the 2018 price that we do have currently right now. And next slide. And Craig, what I'd like to do, I think it probably is a good time to hand it off to you, if you can take it from here.
Okay, yeah. I can talk about the architecture a little bit, and then kind of do a summary and review some things, and then we'll get to kind of the more interesting part.
Sure.
Not that you weren't interesting, Jim, but we'll get to the demo of the product, which is exciting.
Right.
So this is an overview of the architecture of ZTRM Operations Analytics. And as you can see, we're interfacing with SMF, so it's completely standard, completely secure. These are familiar. This is something that you're using already. And in fact, with IBM licensing, product licensing, and actually with a lot of ISV licensing as well, you're compelled to be using SMF. So what we do is we use the SMF standard file formats, and we bring them into the Linux environment. And that is where we do all the extraction, processing, and grouping of records, so the ingestion. And it's all handled on the distributed platform using standard SMF records and output file formats. This configuration completely eliminates MSU for processing. So we're processing, doing all the number crunching and everything on the Linux distributed platform. The resulting data populates Elasticsearch. If you're not as familiar with Elasticsearch, which we've already mentioned, Elasticsearch is a distributed open source search engine that provides real-time analytics. So Elasticsearch is built on Lucene. Most of you may be familiar with Lucene, Logstash, and Kibana. So it's called the ELK stack. Ztrim has an SQL capability module to provide the base metrics for other legacy reporting as well. As always, RSD, we would be interested in learning what your business needs are regarding any custom SQL requirements you may have. So we built that into the process where we can accommodate those. Data can be collected and processed throughout the day for up-to-date dashboards. Some basic questions that come up. There's just some basic business and system decision makers need answered. What is running on the mainframe? How is available system capacity used by system, by application, by workload? And as you know, with the complexities of licensing and billing for various products and things, you do need access to this information. And can consumption be reduced to produce savings with no negative impact to the business? That's a big question. And how do you get the best information? So as we prepare for the demo, let's summarize a little bit. Really, Ztrim Operations Analytics is the focus on the R4HA analysis. It's really what we're focused on at this time. This is a strategic decision by RSD to actually focus and use well-known KPIs for metrics associated with reporting the rolling 4-hour peak and average. We've made this decision because we know that these are the most commonly used, and we also know that given the information, as you will see when we do the demo, that it is strategic information for not only systems, stakeholders, but business decision makers. We provide reporting on various aspects of resource consumption, as we've mentioned. Ztrim has dynamic interactive capabilities, which we will demonstrate using filtering and multiple analysis features. You can create dashboards that are targeted to and meaningful for specific stakeholders. It is very important, primarily, to be seen as an information communication tool. As we talked about earlier, the dictionary definition of analysis is information. It's not just data, but it's information to be used and to take advantage of and exploit. Version 1 focuses on SMF records 30, 70, and 72 for those key KPIs that I've already mentioned. And then finally, it consumes no additional MSU for processing. And this is really an interesting concept when you consider that most analysis products will contribute to your MSU cost. We are running in the distributed platform and we do not contribute to that cost. Okay, let me do some switching here and we'll get to the interesting part.
Because mine wasn't interesting?
No, it's cool, it's cool, it's all good.
So the one thing I want to add before Craig goes into the demo is that we've done this analysis for 2 years, and we worked with a consultant who obviously had that research and familiarity with large banks and insurance companies. And he said that, that group of consultants said that we are, right on as far as like what we're developing right now. And we actually had some positive feedback from Gartner as well. And there's a white paper that came out in January talking about the key to mainframe monetization, and it just does a fantastic job that Gartner did of highlighting Ztrim Operation Analytics. I just wanted to add that in there.
Sure. So what I'd like to do is you see the screen. I'm actually in Ztrim. I am using Chrome to access it, so nothing special, nothing really fancy. I'm interacting with the data. This is anonymized data that we have available that we use for initial demo. So basically what I would like to do is show you, first of all, the high-level application features, kind of how you define the application, kind of set it up real quickly. And then I will demonstrate some of the individual dashboard pane features as well. So you're seeing some of these panes, and we'll move down the page. And then what I would like to do then is then drill down into each of these panes and look at the individual KPIs and just kind of do a deeper dive and show you how we can do additional filtering and analysis for the interactive capabilities, so that while your stakeholders are using this data, as they have questions, they can look at the data in different ways, and it's dynamic. First of all, I'd like to start here across the top. I'm going to go into the settings here and just briefly talk about these tabs. So we have the connection settings. So really what this is doing is I can have multiple Elasticsearch kind of sections or repositories that I'm using, and the indexing. So I've got an index here named demo. You would see the drop down here if you press this. So I use this demo. And then we have the application settings. This is just to set some things, language, time formats, date formats, those kinds of things. You can see that there are options here, depending on what you might need. Once you talk about dashboard settings, so you can have multiple dashboards, as we've kind of touched on briefly, that you can have multiple dashboards for your different stakeholder audiences so that they are customized and more meaningful to their role or their concerns, or what they are working toward or what their focus is. So here's what I've done is I've set the Midwest customer demo as my default, so that when I enter, that is my default dashboard. Let's talk briefly about subscriptions. So a subscriber is somebody that will actually receive notification, and you can, as I said, you can tie this to the specific dashboard. So you can have subscribers for specific dashboards and then receive notifications, and they can access the dashboard directly and then interact with it. So this is a really nice feature, and as we said earlier, zTrim Operations Analytics is really a communication tool. It's to communicate information about your system to decision makers and system people that have a need to know this information. An additional feature of zTrim is you can actually add milestones and cut off deltas. So for instance, if you have certain targets that you want to meet with your workloads or applications for processing, for instance, you can do tag your backups, you can tag things starting up, things ending, those kinds of things that you can see as I scroll down. You can set different features, so batch window, and then you can report on whether or not you're meeting your SLAs. So there's a lot of flexibility here to be able to set these up in different ways. I'll just scroll down a little bit so you can see different examples here. Mappings, we'll kind of get to this a little bit as we go through the individual panes and the KPIs of the dashboard. This is particularly helpful in the application views when we look at the individual application processing. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you can actually add mapping so that, there are things that we do by default because there are program names that are well known. And then of course there are other things that you may run that are more associated with your individual environment. And we can also accommodate those, so you can have a great deal of customization here. And then ingestion log activity. This is where when you run the ingester, so you're processing data, we can actually keep a log and show you the status of that so that we keep records and a log of that processing. Go back to my dashboard. Here I want to touch on these items here. So here the share is a little bit, it's different than subscription. Let's talk about it briefly. So for instance, let's say that you're looking at a particular dashboard and you see something that maybe looks a little bit like an anomaly, something's going on. You can actually send this link to somebody right away and say, hey, can you look at this right away? And basically what it will do we'll send them this link, and then when they click on the link, it will show them that view, that specific item that you were looking at. So it's really a powerful tool as well, so it can be communicated. And then here you can manage subscriptions, and here you can do dashboard edit features. This is where you add a KPI. So we have the full complement of KPIs, as I mentioned before. I'm going to click on it briefly and just show you. There are various choices here, cost 10, cost 11, cost 12. So these are all focused on the R4H and MSU. So we'll see some of these. I've built this dashboard so that we can see specific activities, but this is where you can add, and a lot of these have subcomponents as well, so you can choose these as you're building. This is where you can actually create, and so it's almost like a propagation feature, and we'll talk briefly about that when we go into the individuals. And this one you don't want to touch, right? So here you see the
Craig.
Yeah.
Craig, quick question. Can you check if your zoom is not too high on the side of your browser? To go on the right side. Yeah, the two columns here. Click on it, please. And reduce the zoom to 100%, please. Thank you. You are the man. Thank you.
I'm a little bit, I must be hard of seeing, right? I've got my glasses on. I don't know why that was so high. I don't know. It must have been something that I hit inadvertently at some point. Okay. Thank you. Okay, what I'd like to do now is drop down into some of the individual KPIs. So let's first of all talk about the R4H. What I'd like to do here is, as I want to show some features here, but what I'd like to do first of all is going to expand this so we can get a better view. Okay, so here what we're looking at, this is the R4H, and we've chosen specific dates. There are features for time range and things like that. I'll show you. So what really quickly is what I want to show you is here you can share the KPI like I talked about, and then here you can propagate this so that if you've worked on it and you really like it and you say, okay, I want to use this, but I want to tweak it, so you can actually propagate it so then you can change some features on it. You can export it to a CSV for other functionality or other features that you might want to do, and then of course you can delete it and start over. What I'd like to do is kind of focus on kind of the filters here. So we have, as you can see, some really nice capabilities. I have this filtered on the CPC at the moment. You can see that we have capabilities where I can filter this on entity or LPAR. We have a plethora of LPARs here. So basically what I want to show you here is like I can take this and then focus on the LPARs, individual LPARs, and actually interact with this data in different ways. So I can make different combinations and things like that. So I can put all my A prods together or something like that, just depending on what you want to do. And it has a lot of capabilities. We'll interact with some of these. I'm just showing you the features now. Same thing with the Sysplex. You can go to analysis, and you can see here, so you can use these features, and I'm interacting with this. You can see it changing as I'm interacting with this. So this is very powerful. I really like this view, quite frankly, as CPC level. Let's go and look at this a little bit. You can see here's what we've done is we've shown the R4H peak. So we already have this information, but from this view, I can do additional analysis to make sure we get this into a good view. I want to show you a couple of things here. So I can separate these and dynamically look at this. And this is where I think the power is. I can isolate specific events and things like that and say, okay, well, what's really going on here? What was the exact time? I can see how I'm interacting with the data. This is very powerful. And I can switch this. You see that I still have my peak for reference here, so I can do different things and say, okay, you know, it says that it's 11 a.m. Where is that exactly? Where's the peak? I can interact with this, talk about this so that I know that this is when the peak was for that Plex, right? But this is the specific CPC. So I can see here what its contribution was to the peak. And, you know, depending on other things that are going on the system, then I may have some questions. This is very powerful. This is when I get kind of excited and have to temper myself, because typically when Jim and I are working with the customers, they're stopping me and asking all these questions, or I'm saying, okay, what questions do you have? Because I've kind of given them all this information. These are some of the time ranges that you can use. And so we have a group of presets that are available. This is very nice. And we have a full selection and complement of presets that you can use to interact with your data. You can use relative, and I do have an example of a relative, and I'm going to show you that. You can use absolute, which is kind of what I tend to use, just because I kind of know this data now. I've done this enough. And you would know your data well. So you could play with these and just decide maybe which ones are best for you, things like that. Okay. I would like to, let's kind of move back and look at the R4H analysis by application. I really like this view. So you can see here we've listed primary applications. And again, we can do filtering. Just like I mentioned before, we can do this by CPC. We can do different views of this data depending on what we are trying to focus on. And again, we can focus on this. You can see that I'm interacting with this data. So now I've isolated CICS. So I have a view here of exactly what's going on with CICS. Okay. And I can do comparisons. I mean, when you think about it, okay, I know when my peak was, and this is right before the peak, so maybe leading up to the peak, but this is interesting. Why is it 9 a.m.? Interesting. And then we can isolate other things, obviously. So EOS, I want to kind of see what's going on with EOS. You can see some patterns here. And what is interesting about this is if you know, as you know your applications and you know your processing, you may look at this and go, well, why is that happening? I wouldn't have expected that. And we see that happen quite a bit when we're demoing data. We see it happen quite a bit where people are, you know, they start saying, wait, that doesn't look right. Why is that going on? Well, I don't know. I don't know your system. But it prompts a lot of questions.
And Craig, would you say that there are some companies that actually, because I know we talked to a few customers where they said they actually wanted to see when they did a software upgrade, they wanted to see how the consumption was happening on a mainframe. So with ZTrim, we can show that as well, correct?
Exactly. We had it was a very interesting conversation with one particular customer as we demoed the data, and we'll discuss this right at the end, which we're getting close to our time stop. But basically, what the ask was where the power of ZTrim is, and is when we can demo using your data. So if we have a sampling of your data, and maybe we can demo using your data, and that was really the situation. They had given us some data, and we were demoing using their data. And they had an application recently that had gone through a major upgrade, a huge rewrite. It had been like a year in the making. And the claim for the project was, you know, it would save all this processing. Well, they had not updated anything yet to try to substantiate or see whether or not it actually they actually got the results. And instead of sending us data that we normally ask for, they asked, hey, can we send you another set of data from this target when the application actually implemented these changes in production? So sure, you know, we'll demo that for you just so that you can see. And so it prompted specific questions that they had.
And so when Craig was, because Craig, I think he had 2 inch of a larger screen, but this example, like right here, you can actually send this screenshot to your CIO or to a business stakeholder, or somebody that wants to look at like what's going on. And
right.
Every time we talk about this, they're very, very excited about it, that a business person can actually look at this and understand it, that, you know, here's a scenario that potentially could costing them a lot of money.
Correct. earlier when I talked about the applications, you can see again here you have a really great view of what now this is what's consuming my resources and contributing to MSUs. So depending on what your licensing model is, subcap pricing, all these different features of licensing and costs, now you have a view of this so that you can easily tie those things back. Earlier when I talked about the mapping, this is what I was talking about, where you can add mapping. So this would be a program that maybe is not a commonly known program, but you could actually name it, right? It's unique to your environment, or you're running it under a name that is unique to your environment. I can interact with this, and I can change this so that I can see various applications as well. So I've just gone from top 10 to top 20 applications. And here you can see my list. So it's very interactive, and that's really, to me, the two powerful tools about ZTrim is the fact that it's very interactive.
And the information is right there. There's a lot of different...
Yeah, it's at your fingertips, and as you're looking at it, if you have other questions, you can look at it from a different view right then. And depending on the stakeholder as well, then you can look at it at a different view and, send it to them, or create a dashboard very specific to something. Maybe it's a project, or, a large project like within an organization. It's perfect for that. This is interesting. So we can isolate these things. So now I've isolated batch, so I kind of know what's going on with my batch cycle. Now remember, this is my highest. So this is where, we constantly keep track of this R48 for you so that you have reference points so you can see what's going on. I actually like this one as well. I did this one by month. So these are the sysplexes. And again, the power of this is, it's isolation. I can isolate these things, kind of see what's going on, see what the individual contributions are, and then I can see anomalies. So depending on how I have my plexus set up, I can very easily review this report over the course of a month and see if there are things that I need to consider maybe as I'm reviewing billing or invoices. Maybe I had some anomalies and they would show up here. So it's very powerful depending on the stakeholder, as we've kind of been talking about. You can see I've made some changes, and so ZTrim is kind of prompting me, hey, you might want to save this. So I don't know, is there anything else, Jim, maybe that we've demonstrated in the past that you might want to see?
No, I mean, I just want to, reiterate that we've had a lot of great momentum and a lot of great traction with this particular product. And it's almost becoming a two-step process where we give them an overview of ZTrim and its capabilities and its functionality and the power of the product. And then the next step is that they get all excited about it, but then they send us their SMF records, the 30, the 70, and 72. And, we can turn it around, and then when we are showing them, given a demonstration with their data, it's very compelling, it's very powerful, and the investment the time for them to actually make an investment and acquire ZTrim is just very quick. And these are companies that already have our competitors. It's not like they don't have a tool in-house. They already have our competitors in-house, and they're looking at this saying, wow, this is incredible, and I'm glad that we have, the data that we're providing right now. So it's very, very compelling.
Sure. So, yeah, it answers the questions. What is running on the mainframe? What resources are being consumed by each application or workload? And really begs the question, because this is really what is being asked, how much can I reduce my consumption or control my consumption? If I'm planning new applications or whatever the projects are, by optimizing a specific activity, and this gives you a view into that information. Really what the ask is that we ask you to identify your R4HA peak using the SCRT report and provide those SMF 30, 70, and 72 ideally for the 3 days around the peak. Very compelling, as Jim said, when you see a demo, a ZTrim using your data.
And Paulina, I would say that we if you can look and see if we have any questions from people attending.
Hello, everybody. So for now, I received already a couple of questions. You can ask them using the chat to the RSD presenter. And the first question would be, what's the price of Zitron Operations Analytics?
That's my favorite question.
That's Jim's question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to take that.
To you.
So what we're offering right now, it's a 3-year subscription, and we did that with intent because it's very easy for organizations to acquire it. It's not coming out of a capital expense; it's coming out of an operational expense. And I have to stress that this is our first year coming out with Ztrim, having it be GA, and the 2018 price is $30K a year for a 3-year subscription. I can't guarantee that will be the price in 2019, but for right now, that is the price that we're having right now for 2018.
And what's included into this price?
You get a production license, you get a test license, you also get a license for Elasticsearch. You don't have to pay for that. And you don't just get the license, but this is also including what we say is maintenance, support, and upgrades, but the upgrade really is the roadmap. So you get all the upgrades that happen. You get the roadmap in that pricing.
The next question will be, how long does it take to install this solution?
Jim, I can take that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, really, it's a day. What we provide is basically a full package, and we can provide this in a couple of ways, depending on what target platform. So obviously, Linux, Elasticsearch runs in the Linux environment. We can look at various ways that you can implement that in the Linux environment. It's basically a day. We install the product. If you can get your SMF file and you're familiar with that, basically we're just using the IFA SMF DP utilities to pull that data. And then we can ingest that data, and we can show you within a day how to put Ztrim in place, ingest data, and then start on some dashboards with you.
And how long before you can start getting the reports?
Yeah, you should be able to get them really same day once the implementation is completed. And then obviously it's really just a factor of how often you want to ingest your SMF data, and we can talk about that during the implementation process. But yeah, you should see reports by the end of the day. Are there any other questions, Pauline?
Last one, because we don't have like much time, but what would be, I have two ones. What installation platform options are available and supported for Ztrim Operations Analytics?
Yeah, when I talked about that before, we're looking at Linux, but obviously we can do it in a VM as well. We could provide you a package file to install in a VM. Another option might be a possibility. We'd love to have this conversation with somebody if it is something that your organization would allow, is perhaps a hosted cloud solution. And then obviously we could do it to Linux bare metal as well.
Another one, what is your plan to extend your SMF records coverage?
Great question, because Jim did mention a little bit about the roadmap, and we are obviously already continue to work on Ztrim. We're excited about it. We see the value and the great feedback that we're getting in the market. So our next focus really is with CICS records. because we know that those transactions are really important, and that's a big area. We've also done some work in looking at other records, and we are more than happy to look at other records, if somebody has suggestions and recommendations. I know that recently we were in some training, and one of the things that was mentioned that kind of got us excited as well is I believe IBM is working on doing some work so that IMS, there are some SMF records available for IMS, and we were very excited about that as well. So we are trying to stay on top of those kinds of things and make what is available as the market kind of dictates that. So any suggestions or recommendations, we'd be glad to entertain those. The CICS SMF records is really the focus of the next efforts.
There are no more questions in the chat, so.
Great.
That's it.
Well, I want to say thank you for everybody attending. I hope you found this valuable, and we look forward to talking with you, and hopefully you guys can be sending us your SMF records and us giving you a individual personalized demonstration with your data.